Hello and welcome to a first in a series of interviews for New York Media. Today we're here with Mina Sharif, as an Afghan Canadian writer, humanitarian advocate, and cultural thinker whose work explores intersections of identity, exile, and belonging. Educated in Canada and active in Afghanistan for more than a decade, she has led storytelling and community initiatives focused on youth empowerment and women's education. Her writing bridges Afghan oral traditions with contemporary literary realism, examining the moral imagination of societies in transition. Sharif's voice reflects the emotional precision of lived experience and the intellectual clarity of cultural synthesis, offering readers an intimate view of Afghanistan beyond statistics or stereotypes. Mina, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, you have taken a new position. I believe this is noteworthy and important to cover as a Afghan Canadian. Uh, what is the new role, and what are the important factors to this work with regards to Afghan narratives who are in Canada, becoming citizens, and also for those who just want a basic economic benefit to the country in terms of having a more skilled and resourceful workforce.
So what I'm working with now is an organization that supports refugees in finding meaningful work opportunities and joining the Canadian workforce in a more meaningful way versus survival jobs that is usually what we associate newcomer refugee arrivals with. We found the gap between their skill sets and the needs of the Canadian workforce to be a perfect match that wasn't being connected, mostly because of boundaries that are in place that are quite simple, to be honest. It's oftentimes a matter of workplace culture, resumes, upgrading skill sets, etc. So I'm really proud to be part of that process because as a child of refugees, I also saw highly skilled family members be forced to take on survival work. And I'd like to see that culture shift, not only from the point of view of refugees who deserve to continue the skill sets that they want to offer to Canada, but from the side of Canada as well, so that we can continue to make Canada a stronger place within the workforce as well.
Now, what inspired you are what you love?
I don't think that I ever stopped and made decisions to do what I love. I think I have a hard time staying connected to anything unless I feel deeply emotionally invested in it. For me, identity is so big in shaping what I do and how I involve myself in anything. And it I would say I follow it, but it also follows me. And so being from Afghanistan, being of service to marginalized communities comes so naturally because whether we're talking about the population in Afghanistan or once we have left Afghanistan in exile as refugees, we are a community that's been served a lot of challenges, and I like being a part of shifting that as much as possible.
What is the big lesson from 10 years in Afghanistan for you?
So it was almost 15. And that, believe it or not, that last 5 years was pretty significant for for me. My lesson was really that I could have lived there for 100 more years and continued to learn. Um, and I think that's true of any country, but when it's a country of your own origin, there's a specific um, passion and interest to know the depths of the history along with the shifts and all of that. I would say the misconceptions about Afghanistan. I think I really learned that the misunderstanding is immense and that it's not always by accident. There's a flattening of who Afghanistan is, and I can live with other communities not understanding or connecting with Afghanistan to the extent that I do and to that the population of Afghanistan does. I think what really struck me is, oh no, other diaspora like me who grow up outside of Afghanistan are going to fall victim to the same thing. And so we really need to make sure that we're educating and not in some kind of lectury way, but inviting people to know and understand Afghanistan with more depth and with more nuance.
People who are basically from one culture into another, there's the integration process internally for themselves. Often it's not either or, it's typically a third option, some level of admixture of the two. How would you explain that process of coming to terms with your own individuality between cultures?
I think people who there's just millions of people who can relate to me. It's not even within our Afghan community. It's a difficult process because we don't really have a lot of examples to look up to. They were oftentimes we're the first generation or second at most who are really deeply integrating into a Western country that our parents or our grandparents have relocated to. So we're very early stages. And for us in my generation, so older millennials or Gen X, we're still attached to that survival mode that our parents came with. A lot of us, such as myself, we were born in our countries of origin, and refugees, I would say, is a little bit different than just a family that may have relocated. We've also got the elements of war, and so it's really exile and refugees I'm talking about. And we have so much to grapple with. We have who was I if we hadn't relocated? Who is this person that didn't get to e- develop and exist? And then who am I here? And then thirdly, I have to choose which one I'm going to nurture. So my journey has been confronting that pressure to choose. And I don't see in my peers that a lot of people have really let that pressure go. Most people I see from other cultures integrating into, for example, the West, really feel like that's a decision they have to make, that they have to sort of side with one or the other. And I wish I could encourage all of them to be open to having more than one country that they connect with, more than one home and one culture that they connect with.
Would you argue that the third culture, not just on the individual level, is still a work in progress?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're figuring it out. We're in real time. We're deciding. I'm seeing levels of, just with whatever with what's going on in the world too, there's a lot of anger at even just colonialism and different ways that contributions that have resulted in our exile or our being refugees. And a lot of people take that as a place to stay, a place of anger and a place of resentment. Why, and that comes from having grown up without the survival mode. And then a lot of people who are in survival mode are so lost in gratitude that they're leaving that other side behind. So I
Right.
just wish we would be able to say, yeah, a lot of wrong things have happened. A lot of wrong continues to happen, but that doesn't affect my relationship to my identity and the communities I've been a part of. My Afghan community, my Afghan heritage, my Canadian community, my Canadian upbringing. So I dare to own both, and I wish more people would feel that that's okay.
Uh, Trauma can bring about a variety of responses. I have read and heard some characterize life in some ways, not always naturally, as a process of ongoing grieving, a coming to terms with transition to a new state from a prior state. So what was before, you're grieving, so you can renew something for the new present and the future. But trauma responses can also imply people who are realistic and integrated with the authentic moment. You
Mhm.
can also have moments of people who essentially take a Pollyanna approach. They can be a bit naive, or they can sort of go into a phantasm of thinking about the world. So you noted in that last response individuals who may be lost in gratitude.
Mhm.
So when I hear that, I'm thinking of something more to the latter. Um, how have you noticed people who are coming from Afghanistan, which has been an acutely war-torn and human rights abuse place of the world, geographically, politically, and otherwise, um, have faced that trauma? Uh, has it leaned more towards sort of authentic recognition of the moment and planning and moving forward,
Mhm.
or more into a fantastic space?
I think it fluctuates. I think they, what from my observations, and I can't speak for everyone, there's different cases always, but there is a lot of idealistic thinking about what life offers here because of the contrast, because of the lack of stability and the lack of, day-to-day stability, in security, in opportunity, and seeing it so much greener, that grass on the other side, they can kind of stay in that headspace and also feel like this has been a gift offered to them. And that's where I say there's a little lack of nuance too, because sometimes I want us to pause and say, yes, but we're not just here being gifted an opportunity. We're also here because of leaderships that have contributed to why we're here. And so it can so easily tip from one way to the other. Um, and then oftentimes I see that attitude, or that sort of that's what how people want to feel. They want to feel grateful, but once sort of exhaustion sets in, and you at some point you have to confront that life is completely different. And as that starts to seep in, I see a lot of challenges with people putting on a strong front, or however that saying is, like just really doing their best to keep moving forward. And I think people can get stuck in that. And when I say stuck in gratitude, that's what I mean. It doesn't mean they're happy and joyful in the process, but they are really committed to appreciating that stability and security. And I don't blame them. But I think part of what we have to do to reconcile with our new identities is understand that it's not a favor, um, full stop, to be here. It's also part of the responsibility of addressing history to say there's a reason that we had to leave.
I see people as psychologically reflective in a lot of ways. So the internal work an individual or a small community can do in terms of seeing, for instance, what they have, the conditions they're in now, and then also what people who, for instance, are in Canada,
Mm.
may be taking for granted, can trigger some in Canada to then take account of the sort of the great advantages just by accident into history they're born into.
Mm.
And I think that reflective, contemplative stance can be beneficial for Canadians too, because it lets them take account of to be grateful themselves. Um, what do people in this ongoing and evolving third culture, with the character of your own story, notice that Canadians take for granted? And when you do notice those moments of reflection in others who have been in Canada a little longer, what do they tend to take for granted? And then actually maybe show a little bit of gratitude for once they reflect a bit.
I mean, I can speak from personal experience there. I mean, just even the very basics of I'm 6 years into being back in Canada, and I still think that the power is going to go out any minute. I'm still very aware of having hot water. I'm still very aware of central heating. These are sort of those basic uh, things that we do take for granted. But above everything else, I'd say security, just feeling safe as you leave home. If I'm honest, I think we would have far less refugees from any country, Afghanistan included, if that basic standard was something they had in their homelands. It's mainly that people see the value in, that's hard for us to feel if we're raised in the West and never experience what it's like to. I mean, in Afghanistan, a lot of times, and people say goodbye to each other in the morning and even state, if I make it home, see you this evening. It's pretty, it's just
Indeed.
it's just regular. It's just we sincerely didn't know if we were going to make it home. And me being someone who was there by choice, who lived, a really comfortable life. I'm not comparing myself, but I also didn't know, because there was a lot of targeting of civilian communities. So it was part of life, and that's something impossible to relay to someone who hasn't dealt with it in their upbringing.
And Canada is it's not unique, but it's a good case study nationally. Because, for instance, my family background come direct from American immigrants, and before that, they were from Norway.
Mm,
Um, Other side of the family, part of the Dutch underground, and obviously trying to get away from post-Nazi setups, Dutch, to Ontario, and then to British Columbia, where I am now, and that's basically how I came to be. So, also immigrant story from America and from Holland, and a lot of the cultural traditions, if the family doesn't carry them on, they're just forgotten.
yeah,
I mean, we have a pair of clogs in the house. I don't much care for them, or I don't speak any Dutch.
glad you have
Um,
them.
I have an inordinate love of black licorice for some reason, although I try to not have that much because it's a lot of sugar and sometimes salt in it. But these things happen. And I think Canada is a good case example of so many different regions of the world having people come and have not the same integration experience, intergenerationally especially,
Mhm.
but the same narrative of finding a place of intergenerational respite. So after the Nazis, getting away,
Mhm.
not a
Good for
fan.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, similar experience, but probably more extreme in some ways, particularly with regards to women's rights from the Taliban. Um, what do you take as some of your key messages from the book, from an experience, and how you see that reflected in maybe some other intergenerational, intercultural stories?
I mean, I think what I think my stories or what my message generally is a little different for each audience. And with my own Afghan community, I think a little more empowerment is needed to remember what we talked about earlier. Like you're here for a reason. You're not here as a favor to anyone, but also just the value of everyday life in Afghanistan really struck me as something that the people of Afghanistan were, I wouldn't say taking for granted, but not realizing, not, yeah, I guess taking for granted. That doesn't hit a lot of them until after they've come out of Afghanistan and having to kind of become part of a different culture and a different way of life. That's when they reflect on what daily life looked like in Afghanistan and how special and unique it was. So I really I don't know how to explain it versus except for I'm kind of like in the air. I wouldn't even say a bridge. I'm somewhere in the air between the two worlds, the Western world and Afghanistan specifically. And I think there's a very big disconnect in people seeing the value of their own daily lives in Canada and in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so a quick note on that.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in a world of mass communication per
Mm,
Marshall McLuhan. We have
mm.
mass travel and transit. Even buses go between countries, not just trains and
The world is
airplanes.
flat, as they say. Yeah.
And in so many ways. But more obviously, the thing that changes people's minds are informational. The mass communication is probably the most important with social media and internet and so on. Um, I mean, what parts of Afghan culture, like traditional Afghan culture, and Canadian culture are pretty consistently the same.
Mm,
How people conduct themselves, how they talk, I don't know, things like
mhm.
this that reflect sort of that emergent global culture, and what parts are still uniquely themselves.
Well, I think that's a really perfect way for me to explain why I wrote the book at all. Is I'd like for people to come to their own conclusions on what feels familiar and what feels really different and what feels because it's really an individual assessment, right? Like I feel like something, oh, this is kind of like in Canada. I feel the same in that it's same but different. This feels similar to what we do there, but it just looks different. It sounds different. It's a different but that for me was different than for other friends who had moved to Afghanistan from other countries. So in showing kind of the perspective of people from Afghanistan, and in my book, I speak from multiple perspectives. So even from inanimate objects perspectives and dogs, street dogs perspectives, and of course, various human beings. a young orphan boy, a woman who is a cleaning lady for the foreigner. So in doing that, I want people to see the how rich each position is and each lens is. And in that, I know that people will recognize emotions and actions and celebrations and griefs and contradictions that they have in their own life. But it's not for me to decide which ones match and which ones don't, because I think it's going to be individual for each person. That's what makes fiction so fun, is that you can create a scene and everyone will connect to it in a different way. They'll say, I saw myself in that. And I'm like, you did? I wouldn't expect you to. And then so it's lovely. It's lovely, but I think it's a personal lens that will see the connection or not.
So you're taking the book more as a point of self-reflection and personal inquiry than a stamp of conclusion.
Yeah, it's not conclusive. It's actually not even about me. So it's about kind of how I saw people's lives. I am speaking from multiple lenses, but I certainly see myself in every single story, even though every one of them is about something, a different sort of um, a different theme, a different scene, a different economic, you know, but it varies in gender and in age and in all kinds of different intersections. And I see myself in all of them. So readers always surprise me with where they found themselves in the books, in the stories.
Mina, how can people get in touch with you, and where can they buy this wonderful book?
I think the easiest way is to go to minasharif.com. I've listed all the links where you can get the book. There's of course the usual suspects. I won't name them. You could get it at major online platforms, but we also have some Afghan-owned platforms that gives you an opportunity to sort of buy direct from me, but also support an Afghan business. And there's different options. Local bookstores are my favorite. I know a lot of people are partial to that as well. So you can find all those options if you visit minasharif.com. I appreciate you asking.
Uh, Mina, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it. And thank you again for another wonderful interview.
Thank you.